So hi, good evening. We're here to talk about Kiro.dev and development with AI, but I thought it might be nice to do a little poll. So how many people are using any sort of AI tool to build? Copilot, Cursor, etc. I figured most people, and I'm just kind of curious. Who here, let's say you've used more than just like a couple hours. Like who's semi-regularly say Copilot? Just my Copilot crowd. How about Cursor? I kind of was expected. What's that? Who is using these tools? So who's Copilot? Who's using Cursor? Anyone using Klein by chance? Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. We use it internally at Amazon actually quite a bit. But about Claude Code? Got it. Nice. What else? What's a big one that I'm missing? Tracer? Windsurf. Yes, of course. Windsurf. Trey. Okay. Anyone using Kiro yet? Okay. Well, that's Geo, but he works for Amazon. He doesn't count. Okay. Well, hopefully by the end of this, everyone's going to be at least trying out Kiro. So about me, I guess as I introduced, Eric is apparently my mother chose for Smart and Strong. I don't know about all of that. I'm a product manager in our Amazon Devices group, focusing on TV apps, actually. I'm based in Seattle, so I apologize about the rain. It does rain a lot in Seattle, so maybe I brought it, so apologies for that. I used to be a solutions architect in our Alexa group, where I was helping developers build voice apps for Alexa. And then in my free time, I am a trail runner. I actually just completed my first 50-mile trail race in Canada, British Columbia, a couple weeks ago. It took a very long time. I don't know that I can necessarily fully recommend it, but I'm glad to be done. I've actually given some presentations before on React Native for TV last year at App.js and Chain React, and how the cross-platform nature of React Native makes it a good fit for TV. You can go back and watch those if you want, but I want to talk about how AI is making that a little bit easier. Given that most of us have developed with AI, as we know, it's a bit non-deterministic in nature. That's how LLMs work. But what if we could make it a little more predictable? Certainly, we can use prompts to steer it, to help it, to guide it. But oftentimes, that might say using my project architecture guidelines, using blah blah blah. So sometimes that can be a bit manual, which then makes it a bit somewhat undeterministic. And that's where Kiro comes in. Kiro was launched in public preview a month and a half ago. It's pronounced Kiro, like hero, not Cairo. And it is based off VS Code. There's both Vibe and Spec modes. I'm going to be talking about more additional features like hooks, steering docks, and of course MCP server support. And there are multiple pricing models, but I was just looking, and they're actually changing the pricing model as of September 15th. So look at the blog. Actually, it's free until September 15th. So one of my call to actions is definitely everyone sign up for the waitlist, so you can start using it for free before then. There was always a free tier, but now it's unlimited free until the 15th. Specs is what I'm talking about. It's basically turning a prompt into three distinct phases: requirements, design, and tasks. And those are each markdown files. Requirements end up being, apologies for the font size, user stories that get generated. Data models and interfaces go into design, and then tasks are distinct tasks that get created that you can basically click through. Now, you could do all this manually if you want. Before I got access to Kiro, I was trying to do some of this manually. But what is really neat, though, is that it just does it automatically, and even the tasks specifically refer to those requirements. The app we're going to be talking about is this app that I did vibe code this. I didn't use specs for all of it, but it's basically just it's a React 19 app with Vite and 3JS. I would not have. It shows where the International Space Station is. I certainly would not have spent all this time building it myself. It's got this. That's a pseudo-realistic position of where the sun is. It's not to scale because it wouldn't look very good, but the shading and all of that, that's like somewhat realistic to where the space station is at the time when I recorded it, and super cool. But what we're going to do is talk about how to take a mobile experience and move it to TV. And there is, obviously, there's a lot of differences. And we're going to talk through those. And some of them that we see the most obvious things like, well, obviously the layout, the screen sizes, there's things like font sizes. In this case, how we're navigating around on the Earth. That's going to change a bit with the D-pad versus touch. So we're going to be talking through some of these. And our first questions are, well, what do we need to change and what do we need to tell our AI? Well, for TV, I'm going to share 4 things. One is performance. So TVs are almost always slower than phones, unless your phone is maybe very, very old. So you probably are going to need some sort of performance tiering. Even within TV apps, there's different levels of performance. Typically, older smart TVs often may have fewer features, fewer animations, etc. Font sizes, I briefly mentioned it before, but typically TV font sizes might be a little bit bigger than on what you have on the mobile phone, probably fewer items on screen. The big ones are focus management. Obviously, most TVs don't support touch and drag. Most of them you're using a remote control. You have to know what's selected. It's something as a user you don't really think about, but as a developer, it can actually get very complicated. And then finally, like I said, there's no touch and drag. So this is actually where it becomes an interesting scenario for this app. So we have to update some of our behaviors. And here is a sample prompt I'm using for this. This is a web app that I was using that saying, I'm kind of cheating a little bit, saying that, hey, at 1920 pixels, that's 1080p resolution, I want to toggle on a TV mode. Maybe you have more of like a device characteristic, etc. And then I have some UX guidelines that I pulled from, actually created a separate prompt from a combination of the Fire TV plus the Android TV guidelines. But let's actually look at some wireframes. So on a mobile, this is roughly that app. Open and close the mobile menu, and maybe the first step, if you want to go from mobile to TV, you definitely need at least a desktop or tablet experience. You probably need one anyway, so that's a good starting point. It's a good middle point. And then from your desktop, to go from desktop to TV, a couple things are going to change. Obviously, the aspect ratio is going to change a bit. And then in this case, also the buttons on the side change. So rather than having my buttons horizontally, they're more vertical to account for the bigger font sizes. I also removed some of the items on screen to clean it up a little bit. Next thing is around focus management. You have to show what is actually highlighted. And then in this specific scenario, what I'm going to do is when I hit manual, I actually want to hide the menu and bring up some directional arrow keys. Now, you don't see many TV apps like this, but this is kind of a neat example. And then you have the arrows, that's what's going to rotate the camera around the Earth. And then we want to be able to zoom in. So I'm going to say hold select to zoom in, hold select to zoom out. And then when I hit back, it's going to reopen the menu. So that's what we're going to do today. I've cheated. I've already done some of this. I've already done the performance tiers. I've already done the font sizes, the opening and closing menu. So I've already done some of that. The middle is the TV, middle is the desktop, right side is the TV. So we've done some of that already, but what I'm going to do now is let's do the D-pad controls and the zoom. So how we're going to do that is with a spec. Now, our prompt, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically it's saying, hey, when it's in TV mode, I want to add some camera controls. I want to display up, down, left, right. I want to incorporate some zoom. And you could do this with anything, and it'll go through. You could say, hey, let's create a plan, and it can work. But the spec is going to be a little bit different. So in Kiro, so on the right side, I'm choosing the spec mode. I'm going to paste that prompt in, and it's going to go through those 3 steps I said at the beginning. So first, it's going to create user stories. The first, I think it created about 10. It's talked about showing directional arrow controls on screen, talked about rotating the camera, and then architecture talks about specific components and purposes along with TypeScript interfaces. It's actually putting all those out and each step of the way, it's asking you to verify. It's ideal if you go back and check, but if you're just in a hurry, you can just say continue. And then finally, an implementation plan. So this is where it uses the previous 2 items, and then creates a plan, a set of tasks, and you could all those tasks refer to previous requirements. And you can queue up the tasks. You can do them out of order if you want, but it's just a really nice way so that every time you click Start Task, it opens up a new context window and has all the previous context of the items you shared before. So let's see it. Now, bear with me as I change my, change to start mirroring. Okay, so this is, so what I'm going to do, so I'm trying to run in TV mode. And so, like I said, let's do fit to window. So in this case, I'm not showing on a real TV at the moment, just for this demo. So I did make a new profile in Chrome, 1920 by 1080 pixels. And so now it's triggering my TV mode. So I've got, I had this before, earth rotating. I can change different performance tiers, performance high, medium, low. And then you probably can't read it, but there's a frames per second. And this is kind of my little cheap way of seeing if we're going too slow. Now I'm going to go ahead and do manual. So I do manual, menu closed, and now I've got some controls. I can go up and down. Let's see, where's the sun? The sun would be coming where the light is coming from, and this is supposed to be actually representing of where the sun is right now in terms of it's dark in Asia and Africa, and it's getting dark in Poland. That checks out. Anyway, so zoom. Let's see. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold select to zoom out. This is kind of weird, to be honest. I don't know that I like it. So let's go. Oh, but sorry. Last thing. I hit escape. Menu opens back up. So I don't know that I love it. I want to modify. I want to change the zoom behavior such that in this case you enter in you hit enter, you can hold plus and down. That's actually kind of like how my watch does it. Anyone with a watch, because I can't pinch zoom on this watch. It's not an Apple Watch. It's a Garmin. And so can we modify the existing spec? And the answer is yes. So I went ahead and typed it into Kiro. It's looking at the existing requirements, design, and tasks, and then it's going to go ahead and update those. And I think this is where it kind of comes Kiro and the specs come in nicely, because you have this reference of user stories as opposed to continuous, like I built this and built this and built this. So you kind of have a plan of record. So then it's going to go ahead and change some of the state variables about the zooming on the design and the tasks. And so let's actually see it in Kiro. So let me try to zoom in one more and hope that it is visible. So this is my tasks at the moment. So this is most of those have been updated, but there's a new one here about updating the existing implementation for zoom mode toggle architecture. It's going to refactor the state management, update the keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and because this is a save state, it was retried and doing it again. So now what it's doing is, so the first thing is this steering documents. So this is my project architecture guidance on React.js. I'm using React, TypeScript. I'm using CSS modules. I tried Tailwind at first, but I had a heck of a time getting Tailwind to work. So using CSS modules, React Router, UX guidelines as well. And I'm saying that to kill a little bit of time. It's going through, it's reading, it's understanding the current implementation. So I'm going to go ahead and click follow, and it's doing all this stuff. I'm not going to go through all of it because it'll take a little too long. I'm going to jump ahead in a minute. But what I think is neat. So first of all, this is one of the concepts. Steering is that you can include these as reference, and it's always going to use that on every new context window. The other concept is this thing called hooks. So hooks, it's it reminds me of if this, then that. If anyone ever used that for like a home automation, some event happens, a prompt happens, and then Kiro makes updates. In this case, it's a test runner. So anytime you make a change, it's automatically going to run the tests. There's another one here I don't have turned on, but code quality, et cetera. So all sorts of things you can do. So this is making a bunch of changes, and I'm not going to wait for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and here, I'm going to hit cancel. And then I can go and see my task list. Next to is doing the auto task runner. I guess it stopped. Anyways, that's fine. Let me just stash those changes, get checkout main. Oops. How about I spell it right? Main, remove or abort them. Here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the cheat. Okay, here we go. I think it should have refreshed, reloaded. So, okay. So now I'm going to go to manual. So I'm moving this around. Now I press select for zoom mode. And now I got both up and down. And this is a lot more usable. I can kind of see. And by the way, 3JS was just a lot of fun to play with in terms of like trying to make this space station. And like it's not super realistic, but it's for a demo. Anyways, lots of neat things in here. MCP servers are supported as well. I'm going to go ahead and let's wrap up my points here. So I guess the first question is, I talked about specs and, to spec or not to spec. And a little fun with animations. You could do both. It's not an or, it's an inclusive or, not an exclusive. Sometimes you use Vibe at the beginning, sometimes you use spec, use Vibe to create specs. It's complementary. You can also use it with other tools as well. You just kind of, as you start playing around with it, it's just they're all very complementary. I mentioned hooks and steering docks. What's cool about those is that they work in Vibe mode. You don't have to be using specs. So what my call to action is certainly to try it out. And the goal of this is to try to make things a little more predictable with your editors as you do it. And again, all of this you can still do on your own. I mean, there's probably nothing all that novel, but the automation of doing this automatically, this is where the power of Kiro and the power of an IDE works. So I'm going to leave this slide up here for a minute in terms of resources. I would say, so the Kiro, there's a very active blog and YouTube channel. And I would say absolutely sign up for the waitlist now because they are, just announce on the blog that all requests are free until September 15th. Excuse me. And I don't know how long it'll take them to process it. I don't have that information, but it was, I think, within a couple of days. So I would say Kiro.dev, sign up for the waitlist. And on the upper right, our QR code is our information about TV design and development, as well as a link to the GitHub repo if you wanted to try this out. There's also some sample TV prompts. With that, I want to say thank you very much. Enjoyed chatting with you. If you have any questions, feel free to come find me.